Shangri-La Dialogue is a premium stage for addressing regional security in the Asia-Pacific region. For the first time since 8 years ago, China's State Councilor and Minister of Defense Wei Fenghe is heading a large entourage to deliver a strong Chinese voice. As one of the P5 of the UN Security Council, China sends the largest number of blue-helmeted troops the world over and helps fight piracy in the Gulf of Aden. How can China show its global partners and competitors that its armed forces aspire to be admired instead of being feared over its military build-up? And how does President Xi Jinping outline his vision of national security and modernization of the PLA? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be joined by General Wei, who headed PLA delegation in 2017 and 2018, Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, and is a former Vice President of the Chinese Academy of Military Sciences in the first half of the program. 欢迎何将军参加我们的访谈节目。这次中方的代表团规格之高，规模之庞大，几乎是前所未有。您怎么看我们这次要传递的善意，或者是希望外界得到的信息是什么？
这次这个相会呢，这个中国军方代表团的规模之大，规格之高，是在这个中国军方参加香格里拉对话会上的首次。我们中国军方啊，对这个参与多边的安全防务这个对话平台这个机制啊更加重视了。在当前啊，这个中美两国呢这个关系啊走到了非常关键时期，在这个关键时期啊，派出来魏凤和上将率领这个代表团，说明了我们中国呀对继续发展改善中美两军之间的关系，加强我们与这个亚太地区各个国家的军事合作、军事关系，我觉着呢，这是表示了一种诚意。
国务委员兼国防部长魏凤和上将，他的演讲题目叫“中国与国际安全合作”，您怎么看这个主题？
主题啊，我觉着呢是进行过精心设计，主要是呢要看中国在当今这个亚太地区和世界这个和平稳定方面与世界各国主要国家之间的关系军事合作问题我认为呢，这次这个魏部长来呢，主要任务有4点。第一条任务啊，就是呢要宣传习近平的外交思想，特别是呢习近平构建人类命运共同体和新的安全观，还有呢叫做这个新型国际关系，要宣传习近平的外交思想。第二个呢，要阐释我们坚定不移地走和平发展的道路，执行呢这个和平独立自主的外交政策这个防御性的国防政策和积极防御的战略方针要进行阐释，要阐释我们对国家核心利益和重大问题的我们的立场观点，这是第2项任务。第3项任务呢，就是增进呢与会各国相互之间的关系，进行广泛的交流，释疑解惑。第4点呢，就是要同这个干涉我国内政，这个对我国核心利益进行这个抹黑污蔑的行为呢，做坚决的斗争。
在我们的国防政策当中，有一个很关键的词叫亚洲安全观，这是什么含义呢？
这个亚洲安全观啊，主要是从这个亚洲人这个命运共同体出发，习近平主席提出来的一个新的这个安全观念。这个观念呢，就是共同综合、合作、可持续因为呢，这个亚洲各个国家呀是山水相连，唇齿相依现在在世界上已经这个越来经济一体化这个社会的这个信息化共同文明、共同发展，不能呢这个一国安全，其他国家不安全，用自己国家的安全牺牲别国的这个利益来赢得自己国家的安全。这个安全呢也不是暂时的，要持续的我们同生活在一个亚洲，或者同生活在一个地球。习近平主席不仅提这个亚洲安全观，而且提呢要构建人类命运的共同体这是呢中国呀是和平发展，走和平发展道路。 这个在外交方面的一个体现。这个美国它应该为亚太地区，特别是为亚洲的安全，它应该发挥它这个大国的一个作用，它应该为这个地区的安全呢做贡献，而不应该呢它的出现来扰乱这个地区的安全。那特别是我觉得南海问题，你比如说南海现在大家都知道趋稳向好，实际上真正军事化的是美国。去年我讲过，他口口声声指责别的国家军事化，实际上呢，他用军机军舰到南海岛中国的南海岛礁附近临近海域进行抵近侦察，进行军事活动。他甚至到中国的西沙12海里进行这个挑衅。
魏部长在来新加坡参加本届相会之前，也对河内进行了访问。您能简单的谈一下我们跟越南之间军事交流跟互信到了什么样的阶段吗？
这次魏部长来这个香格里拉对话会之前呢，顺访了越南和新加坡，这说明这两国之间的两军之间的关系的重要性，应该说是我们虽然和这个越南在这个海域和岛礁方面是有争议，但是领土这个边界陆上边界问题是解决了，应该说总体上这个还是一个处于友好的这个关系。海洋权益的争议和岛礁的争议要通过和平的方式，通过谈判的手段去解决。但是这个争议呢，不能影响两国两军之间的关系，要从这个大局出发。但是原则问题上，我们不让步。
中国跟东盟之间有联合举行军演的计划吗？比如说魏部长这次有没有提出这样的建议？然后东盟方面有没有善意的回应呢？
李显龙总理在演讲当中，其中也讲到新加坡要和中国进行联合军演这个我想呢，这个中国和东盟呢，包括和这个新加坡联合军演这实际上呢是这个中国和东盟国家军事联系、军事合作方面的一种很重要的一种形式我们这个联合军演呢是不针对其他的任何国家，这联合军演主要是海上反恐、海上反海盗通过这个呢进一步的增强两军之间的关系。
在反恐反海盗方面，我们从中亚也好，到亚丁湾、索马里海域，以至于到东盟、南海，都面临同样的共同的挑战。谢谢您，谢谢何将军，我们受益匪浅。
After the break, Young Ray will be joined by Professor Zhu Feng from Nanjing University.
The core issue, I'm afraid, at stake is whether the world order will be disrupted and who will be held accountable to this.
Of course, it's just the U.S. Conflict or escalation of the tension between Washington and Beijing is not caused by China, but just imposed very recklessly and very rudely by the United States.
Welcome to Dialogue, Professor Zhu. You've been to the Shangri-La Dialogue many times. Do you have a particular feel about the change in the American attitude towards what was practiced for 40 years, namely the policy of engagement? Do you think this is going to be utterly derailed? What will be the end game?
Yeah, first of all, I see such a change is tremendous. Traditionally, I think the Americans' defense secretary usually will keep the China focused every time they just spoke at the Shangri-La Dialogue. But previously, such a China focus usually is some sort of issue-driven. But so far, then we will see acting Defense Secretary Shanahan. His speech is not just some sort of issue-driven. It's some sort of redefinition of China's threat. It's some sort of reassessment of the China problem. And it's also overwhelmingly, it's a reinitiation of Americans' policy in a response to China in the regional context. From this point, then we will see it's a very, very sea change. We say when US's China focus was very narrowly on issue-driven, then overall the bilateral relations usually could go well because cooperation is very important in policy ingredients. Then secondly is some sort of, it's not just a cooperation, they're mutual relations. Usually also lay out some sort of solid foundation to underscore, or say, operable and workable U.S.-China mutual relations. Then third factor also quickly just emerged. I mean, without the U.S.-China cooperation, the regional stability and prosperity will be very hard to achieve. But if we're looking through the, Mr. Shanahan's speech on Saturday, then we will see some sort of a sea change is, as I mentioned, it's a redefinition of China factor. China is some sort of big revisionist state, in his words. Then China is overall some sort of new threat to the regional rule-based order. But actually, we will see Americans' China response is very narrowly and very awfully on power-based order. It's not a rule-based order. For example, FONAPs, considering its frequency and some sort of it's a provocative posture every time they're there, it's very, very sincerely and simply we say anything but flexing the military muscle. So then that kind of huge policy change is not just a demonstration of Americans some sort of a new China policy, but also I think lay out some sort of a big uncertainty on how the two powers could still stay in the peace in the region.
Do you think the current world order will be seriously disrupted as a result of the current trade spat, the breakdown of which may lead to the spillover of rivalries into the tech war, and what happens next will be geopolitical rivalry in the South China Sea and Taiwan Strait?
South China Sea and Taiwan Strait are not a brand new fresh point. But as I mentioned, in the traditional policy framework between China and the U.S., that issue could be manageable. And it also could be positively and also very, very operably just touched on. But now the U.S. trying to reclaim some sort of policy, the preference on how to handle the South China Sea issue and the Taiwan issue. Then South China Sea issue totally turned out to be some sort of a Chinese very big and formidable threat to regional stability.
Let's put aside the issues of Taiwan and South China Sea. The real question, the core issue, I'm afraid, at stake is whether the world order will be disrupted and who will be held accountable to this.
Of course, I think first of all, the U.S. should be held accountable, but the reason is very simple. It's Americans, some sort of a very dramatic policy change. They declare engagement after China also ended that. And so far, the policy has been announced as disengagement. Now we will see Shanahan's policy, we say statement also just declare some sort of key challenge for the regional stability is some sort of a so-called China's threat to the U.S. claimed rule of order. But the problem is, just I mentioned, so then when the U.S. just always keep China, we say, accused, what kind of reason could be standing the ground to just get to China on some sort of a trial? But then we will see the Americans' China accusation is full of a controversy, is full of a contradiction. For example, then we will see China has no action at all to disrupt the sea lanes, freedom of navigation. But the U.S. totally used their military warship and not just has a provoking the Chinese sovereignty and stability, but also just proclaimed some sort of a multilateral FONAPs should be highly demanded. It's some sort of bigger stir. It's a very big distraction to the current stability in South China Sea. Then we will see contrasting Americans' high profile with some sort of China's bunching, we say, the move. The China-ASEAN actually just focus on their COC-based negotiation. So then we'll see some sort of very interesting response from most of ASEAN's defense ministers from just 2 days Shangri-La Dialogue. They just almost show very autonomously their relationship with China now is going well. So then I see such a big contrast is a very interesting indicator. It's just the U.S. disrupting the region, disrupting the order, rather than some sort of just China did a lot of some sort of big, we say, questionable behaviors. So then I have to say some sort of a conflict or some sort of a conflict between the U.S. and China is fully imposition by the United States. So then, as you mentioned, who disrupt the order, who just has a rocking the boat, it's the U.S.
The latest catalyst, I'm afraid, will have to be looked at from the remarks of Mr. Richardson, a commander of U.S. Navy, who said any maneuvers or moves by the Chinese fishing boats or Coast Guard will be regarded as a response from the PLA Navy. What does that mean?
Yeah, it's also another with some sort of criminal charge from the U.S. to the Chinese behavior. But we also know what China did, what China is doing over, for example, the Coast Guard force and the China's fishing boats. They are totally, we say, complying with the international standards. So Coast Guard force, of course, is very important civilian, the force to keep maritime safety and security in any southern countries, their own demands. Then second, then we see, of course, China is a bigger maritime, we say, resources power. Then the fishing usually is very important part of China's maritime economy. But the problem is the U.S. just always exaggerate some sort of Chinese, we say, coastline, some sort of movement. So they put the China fishing boats as the maritime militia. I think it's a bit unreasonable and even with misplaced happening to such a Chinese move. Then the purpose is very clear-cut. U.S. want to magnify some sort of the Chinese new threat on the horizon, and want just to have added to the Americans' legality to take some sort of such a very offensive and even, we say, such a provocative posture vis-a-vis China.
There's almost a consensus for elites in the United States, for the whole establishment in the United States, that Americans would not only win battles, but eventually the war with China. However, when we look at history, with the hindsight wisdom of history over the past 400 years or 500 years, who will take the shots? Who will be the one that will disintegrate or will be facing decline and degeneration? China or the United States?
Good question, but for the moment it's hard to predict, because the reason is where we see the U.S. still maintain a cutting-edge leads over China almost all the times. So militarily, economically, and technologically, I see the U.S. is still the most powerful states in the world. So that's why I mentioned, so some sort of conflict or escalation of tension between Washington and Beijing is not initiated, is not caused by China, but just how say imposed very recklessly and very rudely by the United States. Yes, if the U.S. just trying to keep the China cornered, or just trying to, we say, intently bring China down, then it will leave the China no way but to stand up. But the problem is how long such a tension will be last. And in one way, some sort of such a conflict could be, we say, just emerged as some sort of, we say, new tension even on the major front. It's harder to predict. But the problem is, if the U.S. and China really falling into such a, we say, all forefront, we say, the wrestling and the confrontation, I don't think there will be anyone could truly benefit at the end.
Are you saying in your understatement that the United States will emerge weakened instead of stronger in its showdown with China?
Of course, I think if the U.S. just, how say, intently and even just very psychologically just trying to use its current advantage to, we say, press China down and even just trying to force China to kneel down in front of the U.S., then as I mentioned, there's no way back for Beijing to stand up. Then such a since it's not a disaster for both countries, but also for the international community, because China and the U.S. now number one, number two biggest economies in the world. So some sort of such a, we say, reckless confrontation, totally damaging the world economy and destroying even both the economy and all. So then I see it's a no-end game. So then I really hope U.S. will not lose some sort of a sensible thinking. For a moment, both sides could just, still getting back to the negotiating table, rather than just see some sort of showdown will be totally inevitable. Face off between the U.S. and China, of course, is also scaring the region and the international community as well, because we'll see such a number one, number two biggest economies in the world is really just in collision. Then I see a lot of suffering will be falling into the world. So then I still cautiously optimistic. I see, of course, Americans such a hardline policy vis-a-vis China, much fueled by such a very, very contentious, the feeling and with the thinking of a China factory. But sooner or later, I think in time, the community of the United States will ultimately recognize bring down China is not totally serving Americans' interests. It will be energy consuming. It will be even some sort of, we say, a big superpower status consuming. So then, on the other hand, then we will see how China could respond. So I think it's also very parliamentally important question. Then I see the Beijing, of course, on the one hand, has to uphold China's interests and some sort of a basic, policy bottom line. But on the other hand, I also don't see the Beijing now is emotional enough, just trying to, we say, equally acting as some sort of a big offender or challenger to the U.S. So then, over the time, maybe both sides will finally and eventually find a way to get back to the negotiating table.
Thank you so much, Professor Zhu. Do appreciate it.
Yeah.
Still to come on Dialogue, Young Ray will be joined by Professor Tan Ki-Gip, co-director of the Asia Competitiveness Institute at the National University of Singapore.
Does it mean automatically that Singapore, along with other member states of ASEAN, will have to take sides?
We will not take sides, but we want the rule-based globalization where the established international order ought not to be disrupted.
Welcome to Dialogue, sir. So what can you tell us about the importance of having this mil-to-mil ties between Singapore and China?
We all want stability in South China Sea. We don't want any accidents. So having more cooperation, of course, is better than less. And given the China-US trade war, ASEAN is so important. We need not only political stability and also military stability among major powers. So I think this kind of cooperation is to be encouraged because it has serious economic implications to the rest of the Asia region, ASEAN especially.
Today, however, the Trump administration decides, and in cooperation with the opposition party of Democrats in the D.C., to disengage, to sever its relationship, economic and in many other areas, from with the PRC. So does it mean automatically that Singapore, along with other member states of ASEAN, will have to take sides?
We will not take sides, but Singapore, like the rest of the ASEAN nations, we make it very clear. We want the rule-based globalization where the established international order ought not to be disrupted. I think in the case of the United States, the President Trump basically, I think, to me, is an outlier among the past President of the United States. So what he has done, for example, tariff to China and also to Mexico, and also to withdraw the generalized system of preferential trade treatment to India, These are disruption to international orders, whether it's in terms of trade, economics, or finance. So I think we will not choose sides. And our understanding is we were told we no need to choose sides. But there are certain principles that we want to uphold.
For example, what are the principles?
Rule-based engagement through the WTO process and regional free trade agreement, whether it's CPTPP or RCEP or FTAAP, so that we can push globalization further. Because it has gone beyond reasonable doubt that greater free trade among nations will improve the quality of life of the majority, although there might be income disparity. These are problems of success which can be addressed. So these are the basic principles that Singapore upheld as one of the most open economy in the world, where our trade is 3 times our GDP.
No one believes American policymakers are stupid. They must be aware clearly that China, along with the other 3 major players in Northeast Asia, Japan and South Korea, respect the centrality of ASEAN. And therefore, it will be very difficult to divide and rule among member states of ASEAN. In this case, what do you think of the tone that Acting Secretary Patrick Shanahan set for his presentation?
I think it was well known that Minister Mentor Lee Kuan Yew, when he was alive, he wanted U.S. to continue to be engaged with Asia Pacific. I think he made it very clear economically. But now we are seeing the engagement is lopsided, more of military than economics. For example, withdrawing from the TPP, which is now known as CPTPP, it's just one classic example. So I think we want U.S. To do by actions that bring back the investment to ASEAN in the scale that they used to do. Equally for Japanese as well. Japanese left ASEAN for mainland China in the 1990s, and we want these Japanese multinational to come back too, and the Korean multinational. Now, I think it is important we qualify. We want the major economic power to come back to ASEAN in investments and economics to balance one another, but not to counter China.
Just as Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong said in his opening remarks that Singapore is too small to influence major powers. When you say you will do whatever you can to attract the multinationals from neighboring economies to come back, what can you do to leverage the resources?
No, that is one of the biggest conceptions about the smallness of Singapore. In terms of geographical size, we are small. Let me quote to you the latest statistic from International Monetary Fund in the year 2017. This is the latest statistics available. Singapore is number 1 in terms of receiving foreign direct investment. As of 2017, 70 billions. China is 40 billions and Indonesia 12.5 billions. But in terms of contributing for foreign direct investment, we are number 2 after Japan. 100 over billions, and United States is the poor third. So how can you say Singapore is small? But in terms of trade and investment, we are top 1 and top number 2, whether it's in terms of receiving FDI or in contributing to FDI. And being a very open economy, we speak very loud in front of anyone on globalization, on transparency and rule-based regional free trade agreement. So I think we do have some important role to play in as far as trade and investment globally.
Thank you so much. I will see you next time. Until then, goodbye.